In President Donald Trump's own words, Election Day was not a good day for Republicans. This week's elections were the first major one since Republicans dominated the general elections that put Trump back in office. But things looked different this time. Democrats swept this round and marked some historic moments for the country as they did it. In New York City, Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani will be the first Muslim mayor and the first South Asian in office. This cycle, there were only 2 races for governor, and they were both won by women. In New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill became the state's first Democrat woman elected as governor, and Abigail Spanberger made history in Virginia as the state's first female governor. Also, Virginia's new lieutenant governor, Ghazala Hashmi, became the first Muslim woman elected to a statewide office there, period. Voters in California also approved a redistricting effort to redraw their congressional map, boosting the odds that Democrats win up to 5 additional House seats. Some Democrat wins were seen in Colorado, too. Aurora, the state's most diverse city, had a conservative-leaning city council for years. Some of those people began to lean even more conservatively in their support for Trump. But voters decided to knock out 2 incumbent Republicans for 2 new Democrats. One of the folks out of a job is Danielle Jurinsky, a Colorado conservative well known for her claims targeting immigrants. Her loss came as a shock to some, since Jurinsky had a major fundraising advantage and has become recognized across the country through her involvement with far-right media. We are officially living under America's longest government shutdown ever, surpassing the previous record of 34 days back in 2019. Republicans and Democrats still can't come to an agreement when it comes to expiring healthcare subsidies, leaving countless people to deal with the aftermath. Both the current shutdown and the previous record holder happened under President Donald Trump, but they're not the only shutdowns in our nation's history. Joining me today is Dr. Seth Maskett, professor of political science at the University of Denver. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me in.
Absolutely. I kind of want to start with the history of government shutdowns in the United States. What are some of the most notable ones and what caused them?
I mean, we've had a handful of them. Mostly it's a recent phenomenon. There was a decision made by the Justice Department back in 1980 that just said the government simply cannot spend money that Congress hasn't authorized. So really, Congress has to approve a budget every year or some sort of continuing budget resolution for the government to continue spending money. And there's occasionally conflicts. Occasionally, Democrats and Republicans or Congress and the president can't agree. Sometimes shutdowns just last a couple of days. We've had some particularly long ones starting in the 1990s. So in the winter of 95, 96, there were big conflicts between the new Republican majority, mostly led by Speaker Newt Gingrich, in dealing with President Bill Clinton. The Republicans in Congress simply no longer wanted to see Congress funding a lot of Clinton's priorities. And so, you know, they helped engineer a shutdown, actually a series of shutdowns that lasted almost a month. And that was, you know, one of the longest ones we'd had, or really the longest we'd had at that point. But then up until, you know, more recently, there was one under President Donald Trump in 2018, 2019, largely over border wall funding. And again, it just comes down to there's a disagreement over a major spending priority, and the 2 sides just sort of can't agree, and parts of the government simply shut down until they can come to the negotiating table and work it out.
Right, that makes sense. Aside from, of course, the duration, what about this current shutdown feels significantly different?
It's different for a number of reasons. I mean, one is that what you usually see the president doing during a shutdown situation is trying to act like the one who's trying to bring all the sides together, that the other side is being unreasonable, and that if they could just, you know, everyone sit together in the room, they could hammer this out. And in this case, actually, President Trump has really been kind of cheering on the shutdown from early on. He's been sort of boasting about the powers he'd have during a shutdown to actually make more cuts in the federal workforce. So he has not expressed really much interest in resolving this, and neither have most Republicans in Congress. Democrats also have actually, I think somewhat surprisingly, been very unified on a message on this, making sure to almost always focus on health care as the reason for this shutdown. And so it wasn't really clear what was going to happen early on. I think it seemed fairly likely that, you know, the Democrats would not be able to maintain any sort of unity on this, and that they'd sort of quickly collapse. And in fact, they've held pretty firm on this
Right.
And so this has just really kept going on without a whole lot of negotiation from either side.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of finger pointing going on. You talked about resolving this. When it comes to past shutdowns, what has eventually brought those to an end, and how can that inform what we might expect this time around?
So a big part of this is public opinion. Usually when a shutdown starts, it's not really clear who the public will credit or blame for things. And in the past, sometimes it takes it takes a while to sort that out. Honestly, messaging is a big part of this. Which party is more successful in portraying themselves as the reasonable one in the room? Which one seems like it wants a conflict to go on? In this case, it wasn't really clear what was going to happen. But in more recent polling, most of the public seems to be sympathizing more with the Democrats on this. And so, Republicans in Congress are starting to see this as this is actually dangerous for them politically. I think some of them are seeing the recent elections this week that were mostly very good for Democrats. In some ways, that was a product of the shutdown. Even Donald Trump said that he thought the results were in part due to the shutdown, that people were seeing that as an unpopular thing that was harming their public opinion views.
Yeah. Given everything that we've learned from past shutdowns, what about this current one? What could this reveal about the current state of the country and American politics right now, if anything?
I mean, one of the striking things when Donald Trump came into office in this term is that he had obviously a very long agenda of things he wanted to get done. Very few of those actually involve Congress. There was, of course, this one big bill involving a number of budget priorities. But beyond that, Congress has not been like a major sort of, field of conflict here and for getting a lot of public policy done. So I think he thought he could really sideline Congress on a number of things. But in fact, of course, it's still a relevant body. It's still, very important for setting budgets and setting laws and all those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So it's reminding us of the relevance of Congress. It's also showing us, interestingly, shutdowns have a way of reminding people what they actually rely on government for. And shutdowns are strange in that they don't actually affect a whole lot early on, but it kind of magnifies as things go forward. So it's not like a shutdown ends the post office or ends the military or Medicare or anything like that. But it does mean, a lot of people just get furloughed, people get sent home. And that includes, areas outside of DC, like here in Colorado, people from the EPA and the Geologic Survey and the Park Services are suddenly sent home. So they're not working and they're not sure where their next paycheck is coming from. And then they're all, where they work, there's all these coffee vendors and taco trucks and sandwich places that are suddenly doing less business and they start to notice it. Then you have travel shutting down, which is going on this week. And a lot of people notice that, plus SNAP benefits. So more and more people are affected by it as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. Certainly very significant consequences of this that we're seeing. Dr. Seth Masket, thank you so much for joining us today. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. A little while back, one of my Hispanic friends in Denver took me to a comedy show that was all in Spanish. It was the first time I'd ever heard about an event like that in the city. And it was just so cool to be in a comedy space where Spanish was the focus, even for people whose first language was English. It was a reminder that joy is something we all need. We tend to look for it wherever we can, even when it's hard to find. One of the comedians behind that show and others is helping joy come a little easier for more people, one laugh at a time. You don't need to speak a certain language to understand this. But comedian Rebecca Trejo knows, in order to get there, you need to get the punchline. It's why she tells jokes in English.
You guys are like, yep, the Latina is here.
And Spanish.
Yo quiero que todos ustedes se den un fuerte aplauso por estar aquí esta noche.
Comedy, more people can comprehend and relate to.
There's such a lack of representation in stand-up comedy here for Hispanic and Latinos, even though we make 34% of the population in Denver. My show was the only one locally in Spanish.
To her, these shows are about more than telling jokes on a stage.
Your creative spaces for people to come in and see their identity reflected.
They're about giving her community something vital.
Obviously, we're Latinos, we're immigrants in this country. We need to laugh as well, especially us, because we're crying most of the time.
Before coming to Colorado in 2021, Rebecca moved from her birthplace in Venezuela to Puerto Rico to Louisiana.
Much of my comedy, what I write, what I talk about, it's immigration stuff. What story do I really want to tell as an immigrant, as a mother, or just as a human being, paying bills on a flying rock?
As a journalist turned comedian, words remained a close friend through all her journeys.
I wanted to do something with my writing, but then I wanted to inspire people. I felt like I had gone through a really low moment in the pandemic, and I was able to kind of get out. I'm gonna take a motivational speaking class, and then I got to the motivational speaking class, and it was a stand-up comedy class.
Mixing bilingual storytelling with humor, she planted a seed in Denver and watched it grow.
And there is a growing scene in many Latinos that are finally being able to tell their jokes and their story in their native tongue.
And why is that important?
Because it's different. The mannerism is being understood without having to explain yourself. You're just going into the joke without having to set up a premise of validating your humanity.
But no matter the language, she knows the words she says into a microphone are beyond an invitation to laugh.
They transform. You can change the narrative of your life.
Words that can flip the script, both off the stage
Jokes have the ability to make you say things differently.
and on.
This is the first time I've performed in this kind of a stage, but I have learned right now to this anxiety, I'm trying to focus it into being this is my dream, I got this. Oh, you be lovely, good night, Lakewood!
With Tom Cole and Gonzalo Bedoya, Antonia Vélez, 9 News. You can find more info about Rebecca, her shows, and upcoming projects through her website, rebecatrejo.com. And it's time for shout-outs, because here on The Culture Report, we love to highlight the people in our community who are doing the work to make it a better, brighter place. A Denver cafe and a Lakewood nonprofit have partnered up to support Indigenous Mayan women in Guatemala through art. Convivio Cafe says it's Denver's first immigrant women-owned, Guatemalan-inspired, and bilingual cafe. It's teamed up with Friendship Bridge, an organization that helps low-income women based in Guatemala through things like loans, education, and health services. The cafe is currently displaying original beaded artwork created by Guatemala's female artisans to highlight their skills and show off their rich culture to Coloradoans.
According to the Indigenous Mayan worldview, Nahuales, which is the theme of the artwork, is a deeply spiritual energy that guides and protects individuals throughout their life. So we chose this as something that maybe the community here in Denver doesn't know as much about.
But I would encourage also for people to come and learn about other cultures, learn about other, visions of life and how we appreciate our journey.
You can head to Convivio Cafe in North Denver to see the exhibit until January. And although those pieces are just for educational purposes, you can head to the Friendship Bridge website to see artisan pieces for sale. Funds from that are used to support the artists. Convivio is also hosting an event on November 13th all about the Beading Wonders exhibit and its creators. Find more info on their website, conviviocafe.com. And as the government shutdown stretches into its second month, some Colorado businesses are offering discounts for federal workers who are furloughed or working without pay. One place is Friendly Nick's Butcher in Fort Collins. They are offering free meat and eggs to anyone losing SNAP benefits, as well as folks who are currently furloughed or working without pay. Another place is Stacked in Castle Rock. The owner put up a board with receipts of prepaid food for furloughed workers to take and present for a meal. And these places aren't the only ones helping our Colorado community during the shutdown. If you or someone else needs help with a meal or food, text the word shutdown to 303-871-1491, and we'll send you back a link to see the full list.